In this presentation, we will discuss documenting your summer food service program. Remember, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. For SFSP record keeping, please be reminded that you will need good documentation to have a good program. Don't lose money through disallowed meals as a result of poor documentation. Source documents are the records you must keep for your SFSP. SFSP source documents must be maintained for 3 years plus the current year. For a checklist of records, you can reference pages 190 and 191 of the Administrative Guide for SFSP sponsors as linked below. SFSP Documentation 101. Documentation required in the SFSP includes, but isn't limited to, daily meal count documents for all sites and all meals, monitoring visits and/or monitoring review forms, annually completed SFSP staff training for all staff, including maintenance of the training sign-in sheets with the dates of training, training documents, agendas, including documentation of civil rights training, which, as you will remember, is required for all staff. Payroll documentation, including timesheets, which is required for all SFSP staff, including administrative staff. We will need to see copies of payroll checks, bank statements, etc. to be included. We will also need lease or rental agreements as applicable, and satellite account forms as applicable. If you transport food, you will need to utilize satellite account forms. Completed racial and ethnic data forms, which are completed annually per site. Itemized bank statements for the SFSP and deposit slips. This will document all expenditures and income to your program. Food and non-food invoices and receipts. FSMC and/or vended meals contracts as applicable. Media releases, such as your newspaper clipping. Menus, production records, and/or inventory records in support of reimbursable meals, and procurement documentation. SFSP sponsors may utilize their own forms or prototype documents to capture various required details of the program. However, the sponsor should annually compare any created documents that are used in place of the state agency or USDA prototype forms to ensure that all required areas are captured. The state agency highly recommends the use of the USDA or state agency prototype documents to ensure that all required information is included, including areas recently updated. Due to popular demand, the LDOE DNS has created a prototype SFSP forms booklet that may be utilized by sponsors. USDA also has prototypes available for most of the forms contained in the state agency forms booklet. You can visit USDA's website or where the USDA SFSP guidance book is located. The prototype SFSP forms book may be accessed on the CMP website under Memos and Resources, Summer Food Service Program, SFSP Memos, and then Memo SFS 20-47. In the SFSP Forms book, you will note that there is a requirements key to the table of contents to assist sponsors in determining which forms are optional versus required. For instance, any items with an asterisk are required for all sponsors. Meal counting or claiming. These are the point of service requirements. It's very important. Meal counts must be taken for each meal service at each operating SFSP site at the time of the meal service. Meal counting systems at each site must capture all reimbursable first meals and any or all second meals, if that's applicable, that were served to eligible children separately from any or all adult meals. Each site needs a designated meal count person with at least one staff member fully trained as backup. When receiving an SFSP review, the point of service or meal counting process is closely reviewed. This is also true of technical assistance visits. Here are acceptable accounting methods at the point of service. Completion of the daily meal count form or a comparable form at each meal service at the point of service. You can also utilize an electronic point of service where all children are coded free. A clicker may be utilized at each meal service where each child is accounted for as he or she passes the point of service with a reimbursable meal. If a clicker is utilized, the final count must still be transferred to a record that accounts for all complete first and second meals served to children, with any adult meals accounted for separately by type. Adult meals will be covered in more detail later in the presentation. Here are common errors found at the point of service. Number 1, the point of service clerk has been assigned to multiple duties requiring him or her to leave the point of service during meal service. Number 2, a head count or a plate count is utilized in place of an actual point of service. Number 3, attendance records are used in place of a point of service. Number 4, allowing the number of meals prepared or the number of meals delivered to be used as the reimbursable meal count or point of service. Reimbursement must always be based on the number of reimbursable meals that were served to eligible children. The sponsor must have backup documentation on file that can prove that the number of meals reported in the claim were served. Daily meal count prototype forms. USDA's prototype daily meal count form is utilized in the state agency's forms booklet. This prototype allows sponsors to record up to 250 reimbursable first meals by applicable meal type. Additionally, the state agency has developed an alternate daily meal count form that may be used. This prototype accommodates the recording of up to 620 reimbursable first meals by applicable type. Either of these daily meal count form versions may be utilized by sponsors. An important meal service reminder. Only complete first meals served to eligible children that may be claimed for reimbursement, along with a select number of complete second meals as applicable. Offer versus serve may be permitted with the SFSP meal pattern, but with approval via the online facility level application. You must indicate and receive approval that you will be using offer versus serve. The number of prepared meals often does not equal the number of meals to be claimed. Site staff must be trained to recognize a reimbursable meal. This is a screenshot of the daily meal count form. The USDA and state agency prototype daily meal count forms may be accessed in the SFSP Forms book on the CMP website. This is page 1 of 2 on the USDA prototype. When a site serves more than 150 children per day at a given meal service, the supplemental or page 2 form may be used along with the first page. Staple or attach the sheets and keep them together. See the reference material available in the USDA SFSP Administrative Guide for sponsors. Please note the following. First, you will put in the site level details. Second, you will circle or scratch through first meal reimbursable meal counts. Third, you will record second meal counts as applicable. 4, you will record program adult meals as applicable. 5, you will report non-program adult meals as applicable. 6, you will report the total meals served. 7, the total non-reimbursable meals, such as those that were damaged or incomplete. And then lastly, you will record your total leftover meals. Then you will provide a signature and a date. The daily meal count form, the state agency prototype. The USDA and the state agency prototype daily meal count forms may be accessed in the SFSP Forms book on the CMP website. Here you can see page 2 of the state agency prototype form, which will allow you to record up to 620 first meals. Please note the following. Number 1 is site level details. Number 2 is first meal reimbursable meal counts. This prototype requests for site staff to report the total number of first meals, including any that may have been reported on page 2. Number 3, second meal counts as applicable. Number 4, program adult meals as applicable. Number 5, non-program adult meals as applicable. Number 6 will be your total meals served. Number 7 is your non-reimbursable meals. Again, those that have been damaged or were incomplete. And 8 is your total leftover meals. Then you will provide a signature and a date. Here are some examples of complete daily meal count forms. When daily meal count forms are checked on review or technical assistance visits, they are frequently found to be incomplete. Sponsors must train site staff on how to complete the daily meal count form being used. These records must be submitted to the central office on a set schedule, which is reflected in your CMP application. Please note that all elements of this form have been completed. When using the USDA daily meal count prototype, if a site serves more than 150 children per day at a given meal service, the supplemental page should be used along with the first page. Please be sure to staple or attach the sheets and keep them together. Here is page 2. Here is an example of a completed daily meal count form on the state agency prototype. Please note that the total first meals, 328, are from a continuation on page 2 of the document. And here is page 2. Please make sure that you keep these two forms together. Here are some examples of incomplete daily meal count forms. See if you can spot the discrepancies. Where is the error on this example? This example has missing information. There are no hash marks on meal counts 17 to 20, 61 to 64, or 81 to 84. Therefore, the totals are incorrect. Where are the errors on example number 2? In example number 2, we are missing the supervisor's signature at the bottom of the page. Other areas of concern are the inconsistent and difficult to read meal count documentation. If you'll notice, we have X's, circles, and hash marks. Also, please note that the state agency does not recognize or accept meal counts represented by a single line that connects multiple numbers on a DMC form. You can note that both in the first meal served section, the second meal served to children, and the meals served to program adults. None of those meals would be counted. Example number 3, where are the errors? There's a lot of missing information on this form as well. We don't know which meal type it was. Was it breakfast, lunch, snack, or supper? We don't know the delivery time. We don't know the counts to be recorded for items 3 through 8. Other areas of concern are the date of the supervisor's signature. This was documented 3 days after the meal service actually occurred. Meal service was recorded on June 11th, and the supervisor signed off on June 13th. Here's example 4. Where are the errors? Again, we have missing information. The number of leftover meals from the previous day, or if there was an indication that it was not applicable, if there were no leftovers. No total meals available for the given meal service are recorded. And other areas of concern include that more meals were documented as having been served in item number 6 than were documented as being available at the meal service. So if we had 50 meals prepared, how could we serve 53 meals? Meal counting and claiming is part of your critical daily documentation. Production records are not required, but they are highly recommended. Daily meal count records, whether electronic or manually maintained, are necessary for each meal every day. Satellite account forms are necessary when meals are delivered to SFSP sites from another location. Again, these prototype forms can be found in the State Agency SFSP Forms booklet under Memo SFS 20-47. Here is the SFSP Prototype Production Record Form. In this form, a reviewer would be able to look at what you prepared for that day to calculate that you did prepare enough food to serve to your children. This is an example of a production record. This sponsor served both breakfast and lunch on June 10th. The reviewer will be able to look and see that reimbursable meals were served for both breakfast and lunch. Further, the reviewer will be able to tell if enough food was pulled or prepared to serve the number of children that were recorded. We have our menu items, the serving size of those items, the food items. You can see the French toast sticks, which are a processed food item, have a CN label. You'll see the quantity prepared, the leftover items, and the total number of children and adults served. Here is a sample SFSP satellite account form. This form must be used when food is being transported from one location, such as when a sponsor central kitchen or food service management company is cooking at a different location and is sent to another feeding site. Here's a sample of the satellite accounting form. The sponsor is transporting unitized or pre-portioned meals to the feeding site location. The hot items are portioned and packaged together. The remaining items will be placed on the serving line, providing children with the opportunity to take or decline items. You can see we've indicated the date, the meal service, the number of pre-plated meals shipped, the portion sizes, the temperatures leaving and arriving on the site, the signature of the driver, the time departed, and then the signature of the person who received the meals and the time those meals were received. All of this information is critically important. The sponsor is transporting the AM snack along with the scheduled lunch for the day. Both meals are being transported to the feeding site are shelf-stable meals, hence the not applicable indicated for temperature. Here's the racial ethnic data form. This is completed by program monitors. Please be reminded that the racial ethnic site data form must be completed for each operating site on an annual basis. The form must be completed while the site is still in operation. If a site has different sessions, forms do need to be completed once per session. This is an area addressed during an SFSP review. Here are instructions for completing the racial ethnic site data form. The sponsor should complete this form for each site each year. Sponsors of residential camps must collect this information for each camp session. Use good judgment based on observation alone. The sponsor may use visual identification to determine a participant's race or ethnicity. The parents of participants may also be asked to identify the racial or ethnic group of their child or children. A participant may be included in the group that they appear to belong to, identify with, or is regarded as by their community. Record ethnicity first and then race or races. To provide flexibility and ensure data quality, separate categories shall be used when collecting and reporting race and ethnicity. Ethnicity shall be collected first, and respondents shall be offered the option of selecting one or more racial designations per participant. The sponsor must retain racial and ethnic data as for 3 years and must safeguard this information to prevent its use for discriminatory purposes. Access to program records containing racial or ethnic data should be limited to authorized personnel. Here are some common problems noted by state agency staff with the racial and ethnic site data form. There's no signature or date on the form. Only the ethnic or the racial category section is completed on the form, while both sections are required. Or the form is not completed at all sites annually. The staff member completing the form must not question children as to what their ethnicity or race is. This must be completed without involving those children participating in SFSP. Here's an example. The monitor observed meal service at the ABC North Park facility. There were a total of 55 children participating in the meal service that was observed. Per the monitor's determination, he or she deemed that 53 children were non-Hispanic or Latino and 2 were Hispanic or Latino. Of this total, 55 children, he or she determined that 47 of the children were African American and 8 were white. So you can see that all 55 children are represented in both the ethnic category and the racial category. Time and attendance records. All administrative level staff reported on this form should be listed on the latest approved sponsor level application. This form is to be completed weekly. Here is the time and attendance report for site level staff. All site level staff should be reported on this form and should be accounted for in the latest approved facility application. Again, this is completed weekly by site. Mileage records. Mileage reimbursement must be well documented by the sponsor and approved through the latest sponsor application in the budget. There's 1 sheet required per admin level staff member as applicable. As a reminder, mileage will not be reimbursed if it is not represented in the budget. Here is a mileage record for site and food service staff. Please be aware that mileage is not an allowable SFSP expense if it has not been included and approved in the most current sponsor level budget. Mileage should never be reimbursed by the sponsor to an employee when there is no record in support of the SFSP mileage traveled. Information documented on the time record should be in agreement with the staffing information included and approved in the most current online applicable form, either the sponsor or the facility level application. For instance, no staff member should be working more hours per day than approved in the associated online application staffing plan. Monitoring duties and required forms. The monitors of the SFSP are a key link between site-level activities and the central office. Monitors are responsible for completion of the first 4-week review form annually at all operating SFSP sites, even for those that operate for shorter than 4 weeks. Monitors also complete less detailed visit forms, which are the pre-operational form and the first week form. Effective summer of 2019, all sites are required to have both a first week visit and a first 4-week review, regardless if they are in good standing and a returning sponsor. Here is a screenshot of the pre-operational visit form. This is a 1-page document completed prior to the start of the SFSP at any and all new sites. This is a screenshot of a first week visit form. This is a 1-page document completed in the first week of operation at all approved SFSP sites, regardless if they are new or returning. It must be completed at all sites in the first week of operation unless a waiver is in place for the sponsor for summer of 2020. Please contact the state agency if you have any questions about this waiver. The first 4-week review form. This requires the monitor to report to the site prior to the start of the meal service or prior to the delivery of meals being observed on the day of review. This is a detailed form that must be completed by the monitor and signed by both the monitor, the site supervisor, and a sponsor representative. It requires the monitor to observe all of the meal service as well as clean up following the meal service. The monitor may need to provide technical assistance and/or a follow-up visit to the site as a result of the review. The first 4-week review form is a 3-page document completed in the first 4 weeks of operation at all approved SFSP sites. To be completed annually for all approved SFSP sites, regardless of the length of the program. There is no waiver option at the present time that allows for this monitoring review to be waived. The first 4-week review form. See Memo SFS 19-35, which is a Q&A SFSP rescission webinar for information regarding timing of the first week visit and the first 4-week visit at sites that may be in operation for less than 1 month. Below is a direct link to the memo. Here's a recap of documenting your SFSP. The forms referenced in this section are considered SFSP source documents. As a reminder, these must be maintained at a minimum for 3 years plus the current year. Forms covered in this section include the following: the daily meal count form, the SFSP production record, satellite account forms, racial ethnic data forms, mileage logs, both site and administrative level if applicable, time and attendance logs, again for both site and administrative level, and monitoring visits or review forms.